Hello, welcome to the Marketing Meetup. Today we have a session all about the 5 principles of great email marketing, and it's with Clara, who has just stepped out of her role as the head of CRM for Money Supermarket and has done something incredible in that she's become a marketing consultant and also a coach and also a non-executive director for a bunch of incredible companies. All this means to say is Clara brings a wealth of experience and information in how to bring together great email marketing. Now, this is one of these sessions where Clara spent a short while speaking through the absolute fundamentals of great email strategy. It's the type of thing where you're going in and you know what, the interesting thing about this is that sometimes these things feel like the basics. But you actually ask the questions, are you doing these 5 things? And so often the answer is actually, no, we're not. And so this is a reminder for folks who are a little bit more senior or an absolute education for folks who are a little bit more junior. In either case, I think you'll get an awful lot from it. After that, we spent a little bit of time going into Q&A with the questions from the community. And there were some really great, thoughtful questions. So I hope you really enjoy them, as well as some fantastic recommendations for newsletters you should be following yourself. Before we get going with today's session, then I want to say a big thank you to this week's featured sponsor, who are Content Square. Now, some of you may remember Content Square because Sahana, who works for Content Square, spoke a long time ago about imposter syndrome. It was one of the most impactful talks that we've ever had for the Marketing Meetup. Sahana absolutely blew everyone's socks off, and it's the one that people mention to me more than any other talk, even to this day. But Sahana works for Content Square. Content Square are an organization which appreciate that every person coming to your website is a unique individual. They're a human being the other side of their clicks. And Content Square enables you to look at how people use your website and then adapt your website to match, whether that's through their analytics, which enables you to understand like how people are using your website, but then it'll ultimately enable you to make their experience so much better. So do take the time to check out Content Square and also Sahana. With all that said, my introduction is done. So now I'm going to hand over to Clara, who will be speaking all about the great principles of email marketing strategy. Enjoy.
So allow me to introduce myself. So I'm Clara, and I'm super passionate about helping businesses grow through email marketing. I currently run my own email marketing consultancy, and I'm also a certified coach and mentor. I live in Watford with my partner David and my cat Bonnie. And you can talk to me about anything, but here are some of the topics I love to talk about at length. So music, learning, anything self-development, love talking about sustainability, festivals, travel, being a veggie, and trying to be a vegan. And I'm super excited to be here. So before we talk about email marketing, it makes sense to give you a bit of context of my journey. So I have many years experience under my belt when it comes to email marketing, CRM, loyalty, retention. So I managed the loyalty program at Monsoon Accessorize. Then I worked at Expedia Group, so working for brands like hotels.com, then over to Photobox, and then Money Supermarket, where I was head of CRM strategy and planning. You can see top right, there's a picture of me that where I did a talk to 2,000 or 3,000 people on the subject of email marketing and CRM. And more recently, I contributed to a well-known textbook, Digital Marketing Strategy. So book contributor and editor on all things email CRM. So fundamentally, email marketing is all about building relationships. It's about how you build a connection with your audience. And I've got to say, it's one of the things I love the most about email marketing. It's all about human connections. However, I want to be frank and real here about some of the challenges that we face in email marketing. And, you know, some of these challenges here are faced by marketers more broadly. But they look like, you know, ambitious revenue targets. We're in uncertain times at the moment. So, you know, you're probably experiencing decreased budgets. you're probably experiencing limited time, huge expectations on your shoulders. When it comes to email marketing, you might have a lot of complexity. So you might have data in 27 different places. Or perhaps you're experiencing a kind of lack of support around design, tech, or analytics. Or you might have a boss who doesn't see the value in email marketing. I just want to say, I have been in your shoes. I know exactly how it feels. And hopefully, if there's anything I can give you today, it's some hope. So today we'll be going through the 5 must-have principles for your email marketing strategy. I also want to give you some tips on how to win over your boss when it comes to email marketing. And I want to cover one of the biggest mistakes I see made. So let's start by asking, what do we actually mean by strategy? So a strategy is essentially a plan of how you will achieve your goals. So if we take a step back and look at the bigger picture here, we're looking at what your business goals are. So you would have set these at the start of the year and throughout. Then that feeds into your marketing goals and strategy. Then that cascades down into your email goals and strategy. You then execute your plan, you measure your results, and then you refine a strategy. And the reason I want to share this plan with you is I want to give you context of where email marketing strategy and goals sit in and amongst the bigger plan. The great thing about email marketing is that it can support each stage of the buyer journey. So I'm sure you're all very familiar with AIDA model, so awareness, interest, desire, action. But what a lot of people don't realize is that email marketing can actually help your user, your customer, your client, all the way through the buyer and decision-making process. So for example, in the awareness stage, you might find that your a visitor to your website signs up to subscribe to your newsletter. Then over to the interest stage, you might find that they're opening emails around testimonials or educational emails. Then when it comes to desire, you might find that actually we're starting to get a bit more interested now and we're interacting with content. So you might have sent out a survey and they're starting to respond. Then we go through to action, which is where they take an action. So they buy from you, whatever, regardless of your product or service. And you can see this can vary in length. So depending on your business, this could be very short. This could be a matter of hours, days. But for other businesses, maybe B2B businesses that have much longer buying cycles, this might take months. So the question is, why have an email marketing strategy? So the first point is that it really helps you connect and build a relationship with your target audience. It's about that human connection I mentioned at the start. It offers a highly personalized experience. So I'm aware of personalization in other marketing channels, but you get to go a bit deeper with email marketing. And it delivers such a powerful return on investment and the opportunity to deliver repeat sales. But without a strategy, you risk confusing and even losing your audience. It's really important that you don't just wing it. You don't just throw content out to your audience and hope that something sticks. You want to have a really considered strategy around what your audience are receiving from you, and it makes sense to them, it resonates with them. So let's look at the 5 must-have principles for your email marketing strategy. Number 1 is get super clear on your goals. So what I mean by this is looking at what your business goals are for the next 12 months and understanding how that relates to the goals you set for email marketing. But it's also important to be really aware of what stage your business is at. When you're kind of in the day-to-day, it's easy to forget, but this is really important to kind of take note of and make consideration of. So I've just pulled together a very high-level example scenario of 2 different companies and how email marketing goals might look for both of them. So company A is a startup and company B is a B2B business that's been established about 5 years. So the business goal for company A is that they want to grow. They want to grow through acquisition of new customers, and they have a 20% growth target. So what the email marketing goals might look like is they want to improve the sign-up experience. So aligning that to 20% of the in line with the business goal. They might focus on optimizing their welcome sequences and improve the engagement around those emails. Whereas company B, they might have a business goal to increase purchase rate. So repeat purchase rate by 15%. Their email marketing goals might be slightly different in that they want to enhance and improve their nurture sequences to keep existing clients engaged so that they get that repeat purchase within 6 to 12 months. Now you can see that they're both focusing on the kind of early stage of the journey, but they're slightly nuanced depending on the business goals for each business. So my top tips for goal setting are to acknowledge the stage your business is at and really kind of make consideration around where your business is going and what the business goals are. Create email marketing goals that support your broader business goals and really factor in what success looks like for your business. Principle number 2 is leverage insights that already exist. So what do I mean by this? Well, first of all, let me ask you a few questions here. What do you already know about your audience? And how much of these insights are you currently using? How much of your data is accessible and all in one place? Now, that last question is particularly challenging in certain scenarios, in certain businesses where data might be all over the place. But these are good starting points in terms of understanding what access, what insights you have that already exist within the business. So by getting clear on who your audience is, you can provide compelling and personalized customer experiences, increase engagement and repeat purchases, be able to best solve your audience's pain points, and create wow content that resonates with your target audience. So my top tips for insight here are to gather what you already know about your audience and start to build a picture. You'd be really surprised if you start to map out your kind of current understanding of your audience. You start to see where the opportunities are, and get help from data tech people if this exists and is accessible to you within your business, just to start to help you build that single customer view. And my guidance here is to identify those gaps and turn these gaps into opportunities. So you might find that there's something really obvious that you don't know about your audience, or there may be assumptions you've made, and that you're basing a lot of your activity on these assumptions. So it's important to get really clear about who your audience is and validate those data points. Number 3 is to get personal with your audience. So email personalization is just so much more than name and subject line. I'm sure you've had plenty of these emails. It's coming out of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, so your inboxes are probably inundated with all sorts of emails. But broadly speaking, and on the whole, personalization for email marketing can go so much deeper and drive so much value. So personalized emails deliver 6 times higher revenue, but 70% of brands fail to personalize their email marketing. And I just want to say this is a huge missed opportunity. And you might be thinking it's highly complex for my business. You might be thinking, I don't have the team, I don't have the time. But actually, 70% of brands, that's a huge amount of brands that aren't capitalizing on the opportunity to personalize. And it's not just about the revenue. This is about building those human connections through email marketing. So you might be thinking, well, how do I even go about using data to personalize the customer experience? don't I need to be working for, a huge company like Expedia Group to have all the kind of data scientists that I need at my disposal? Well, I want to share with you that that isn't always the case. And in fact, small business owners can start to personalize their customer experience in a very simple way. So I want to share with you a case study, a very brief case study of a client that I worked with recently. She runs pregnancy classes and she has lots of people sign up to her free classes, but no one was signing up to her paid classes. The impact on this particular business was low revenue, spending hours and hours creating emails that weren't working, and just getting really frustrated because, putting lots of effort in, but not seeing results. So I worked with this business, this client, to understand what their goals were, and their goals were to get more people to sign up to their paid classes, but there was no strategy in place. So we mapped out the customer experience, and I realized there was a really nice opportunity on their website to collect the due dates of people that are attending her free classes. So that was a really great opportunity to personalize the content, because essentially now that we know their due date, we can personalize content according to their trimester. So you can see here, this simple case study means that you don't have to have huge teams of analysts or lots of complex data to get going with your personalization. But I do want to say, don't overcomplicate it. There is definitely a tendency in marketing as a whole to want to put everything into our content and get excited by lots of data points. And I get that. That is something that we have all been guilty of. But start small. And the reason for starting small and building is you're going to see what's working, what isn't working. And I appreciate we're, time pressured. We don't have as much perhaps time in the calendar to test. But when it comes to email marketing personalization, you don't want to get too complex too quickly. What you risk is a poor customer experience, but also you risk not knowing what is actually resonating with your audience. So we're coming up to principle number 4, and this is about segmenting and serving your audience. So I know there's an array of businesses on the call. I'm not sure the stage of the kind of level of segmentation you might have in your business, but I want to share a really simple framework if you don't have anything in place. And this is designed to just start to recognize your segments based on their behaviors. So high value would be your most loyal clients, customers. These are people that are advocates for your brand, and they essentially are kind of, to be cherished and looked after. They're going to be coming back to you time and time again. Then we have your active. So you might have, this might be called something else in your business, but essentially these are people that spend semi-frequently with you, but the goal would be to move them up into high value. So we want to give them content that inspires them to purchase more frequently. And then we have the lapsing or lapsed segment. So these are guys that are disengaging with you. They're not interested, or they're losing interest in your brand. So we want to treat them slightly differently. And I appreciate for those that are on the call that may have more sophisticated segmentation out there, and you can go to kind of varying degrees of this. If you don't have anything in place currently, this is a really nice framework to start and get going with, because it starts to recognize the behaviors of your audience. So find those commonalities within your audience, find what groups, kind of natural groupings you have within your audience. And from there, once you've identified those commonalities, you can start to understand, what are they struggling with? What is it that they are finding difficult that you can help solve for them? And it's really important to be clear about this. How are we helping solve the problems for our audience? So you want to create content that solves their specific challenges, content that sparks their curiosity, drives relevancy, and inspires action. This is an old saying now, but content is king, and I still truly believe this. So you want to be wowing them with your content, but how do you do this? So great content will keep your audience engaged throughout the buying cycle. I showed you a slide earlier where email marketing can support at different stages of the buyer decision-making process. But even if someone's just purchased with you and you continue a dialogue with them, you're going to build those relationships. And remember, this is about connecting with your audience. This isn't just about one-off transactions. So it's important to really keep that in mind, that you're communicating and building those relationships even when they've just purchased with you. And just a side note here, just don't forget to design mobile first. It's obvious to a lot of people, but it's also easily forgotten. Revenue on email is 4 times higher than desktop. So it's just something to consider in your strategy. I wanted to share a couple of examples of my own personal, email inbox in terms of who I think is doing this well. And I'm sure you've all got your own preferences around who you think is doing email really well at the moment. And it comes down to, what kind of sparks attention in the inbox. So for those of you that aren't aware of Lick, they are a kind of environmentally friendly paints company. They also have a great following on social media. What I like about them is their inspirational content. So I've included them in here because personally I like kind of consuming their content, because it motivates me to want to paint more of my house, which I haven't done yet, but will be doing. And then apologies for the screenshot here, that may not be so readable, but essentially this is a welcome email from Patch Plants. So if you haven't heard of them, they're a startup and they deliver really cool plants to your home. And what I really like about this is the welcoming aspect, the tone of voice in helping me feel like I'm part of a community, but also signposting ways that I can get involved in, with their community. And it's just a warm welcome from the owner as well. So next time you open and read through your emails, have a look at what inspires you and what can you take from those emails that capture your attention. What can you leverage for your own businesses? A very, very simple high-level wireframe for those of you, again, who are maybe just starting out or you are exploring email marketing. Again, you can go very complex on wireframes, but I just want to share a very kind of simple layout that you can use straight away. So you want to have a compelling subject line. Then you want your preview, your pre-header, which is essentially the line underneath that on your mobile you'll see sits underneath your subject line. You want a captivating email around kind of something around a bold headline around your content and what you think will inspire your readers to read and take action. You then want a friendly closing and a clear call to action. So again, this is really, really simple, but for those of you that aren't doing any email marketing, I just want to give you something to get started with. It's important here just to note that attention spans have reduced in the last few years when it comes to email marketing. So in 2018, the read rate for emails was 13.4 seconds. And the last read of this in 2022 has reduced down to 9 seconds. Now, 9 seconds might seem like a lot when you're reading through an email, but the point to make here is that the trend is going downwards. So we are spending less time reading content and we're consuming a lot more. So TikTok, Instagram, Reels, Stories, we are consuming a hell of a lot more content than we ever have before. So it's no surprise that our attention spans have reduced. So top content tips. What questions do you get asked about all the time with your target audience? So if you're a B2B or a B2C company, you're thinking about your audience here and what kinds of frequently asked questions you might get asked that perhaps aren't solved for. You can turn this into content and leverage this across your marketing channels. So this is a really simple way to get started. I know we're going to be covering off content ideas later on in the Q&A section, but there's just a quick way to get started is to start thinking about the kind of questions you get approached about. I just want to share a really good website that I find really good for inspiration. It's called reallygoodemails.com. If you haven't heard of it before, I highly recommend checking it out. They have great templates, layouts. They just have really nice inspirational emails. So if you're stuck and you need some inspiration, do check those guys out. And then the final principle is to innovate through a test and learn strategy. So I'm a big advocate of test, learn, and iterate. So with any marketing channel, this is ideally the goal, where we have time to test and learn. But really, there is no, see email marketing as a science experiment. We're not going to know one thing might work for one company, but it might not work for another. So it's about testing with your existing audience just to see what works and what doesn't work. So you might be thinking, what should I test? How should I get started? And again, here are some just simple ways to get started, or kind of prompts to start thinking about. So you might find that your emails aren't getting opened as much as before. So you might see a decline in open rates. So try testing different subject lines. You want to try A/B testing, maybe tone of voice, or just try mixing up your subject line hierarchy, for example. You could try sending at different times of day. Again, your audience, who are they? Are they on their way home from work at a certain time? Are they checking emails at lunch? So think about your audience. What behaviors do you need to adapt to? Poor click-through rate. So you might find there's a decline in your content being clicked. People aren't clicking through on your content. So the point I made earlier about attention spans, you might want to try switching it up from long form content to short form. Not suggesting you scrap all your long form content, but you might just want to try testing that to see if that gives you any improvement. And also a simple change could be making your call to action more prominent in your email. Sometimes I look at some emails and the call to action is really well hidden, and ultimately that's something that needs to stand out. You might find you're seeing poor conversion, poor sales. So here I suggest addressing your content mix. Are you too heavy on the promotional emails? Do you want to be looking at perhaps sending content in between that inspires and engages people, not necessarily all about sending them to a sale? Mistakes do happen, and it's about embracing these mistakes. And actually, I've been in those scenarios. I think we all have, whether for those in email marketing, there's going to be those moments where things haven't gone to plan. And what I say is embrace those mistakes. You're only human, they're going to happen, but it's about what can we learn and what can we do differently next time. And, it's about making things more kind of seamless for the next tests that we run. What else matters when it comes to email marketing strategy? Well, I'm a big believer in having and building a strong team around you. So at the start, I talked about some of the challenges around email marketing and what we're facing, ambitious targets, decreasing budgets, limited time. So hire and develop real talent around you to help achieve your goals. It's something I've always done throughout my career, and I've been super privileged to work with some amazing, talented people. I've included this slide because I have been asked this question a few times, and I've also seen it mentioned in the past on this in these sessions. So I just wanted to share my take on this, and it's worked for me. which is how to win your boss over to email marketing. So you might be in a scenario where they don't believe in the value. Here are a few things that you can do. So demonstrate the value through testing, demonstrate that email marketing is delivering for you, but evidence it, show proof. Work out how much time you're saving by automating your emails. We didn't go too much into automation today, but that's a huge benefit of email marketing, is that you can reduce the effort required and drive those efficiencies. And then a content strategy that's leveraged across marketing. So you don't have to necessarily always design something unique for email. You can leverage from other channels as long as you adapt for email. And remember, you own your email list. You don't own your social media followers. Think of social media as renting that space, whereas with email marketing, you own the data. It's an asset to your business, and you control the schedule. And then finally, one of the biggest mistakes I see businesses make, and I just want to share from my own personal experience here, and if this can help at least one person on the call, I'd be very happy. I call this shiny object syndrome, and essentially this is just about companies that have the desire to migrate to a new CRM platform, thinking that it might solve all of their problems. And I just say stop for the moment, pause, and consider these questions. So migrations are a huge undertaking. My questions here link to essentially making sure you're making the right decision before you leap in, because those that are delivering any kind of strategy will have to go kind of on the back burner. So, are you fully utilizing your current platform's capabilities? Is it the right time? We're in uncertain times at the moment. Your targets, your goals might be really, really hard to reach. So is it the right time for your business? Be prepared to downweight your current objectives for at least 6 months. So put any kind of strategy on hold, pull a dedicated team together, and have a baseline of performance in place. So yeah, I completely see the benefit and the upside of migrating, but just make sure it's the right time and the right decision, because it's a huge undertaking. So just to recap of the 5 principles. So get super clear on your goals, leverage insights that already exist, get personal, segment and serve your audience, and innovate through a test and learn strategy. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your time today. I'd love to connect. So here are my details. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and here are my contact details. Thanks so much.
Just lovely. Thank you so much, Clara. We've got Paul coming in saying, loved this, superb. We've got Catherine, thank you, Clara, that was great. We've got Jenny, fantastic, thank you so much. And now we've just got a stream of thank yous. I also want to log my admiration for the QR code. I think that's a moment of genius. And so good work on that. But also thank you so much for taking the time with walking us through those principles. The way that we set up this session was like, it was always going to be, we were going to lay the principles down, and now is the time to apply it. And like, you can see a bunch of folks. In fact, you may not be able to see it right now if you're still sharing your screen, but there are a bunch of folks in the chat feature right now going bananas with the thank yous, which is just a lovely, lovely thing. So we've got a couple of scenarios that was passed through us before the event, and then we've got 25 open questions as well, which is phenomenal. So that's great. So let's get going with the 2 scenarios. So the first is, I say scenarios, the second one is more of a question, but it's useful nonetheless. But the first one is, we are a very old and well-established business, so 170 years old, involved in B2B, producing packaging for FMCG businesses. We're unsure what cadence to apply to our email campaigns, as we do not wish to plague prospects with emails, but do wish to be front of mind in their buying cycles, which are typically pretty long under normal circumstances. Clara, go.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the question. So the point you made about buying cycles and the length of them are absolutely one of the key differentiators between B2B and B2C. And one of the reasons for that is the number of people involved in making a decision. So you have lots of different decision makers. And sometimes, and I don't know enough about your business in terms of the kind of price points, but it might be a big investment. So it might take a lot of time to commit to that kind of investment. My guidance to you is to do some testing. So when I first saw your question, I was thinking, and I don't know if you do anything currently at the moment, but you might want to try fortnightly and just see how that goes. I would certainly be benchmarking against yourself rather than anyone else. So run that for a few weeks and see how, what the performance is of your campaigns. But also try and get a sense of what your audience, I guess the frequency upon which you're speaking to them, what is it you're speaking to them about? As long as you've got relevant content, and I think it makes sense to go fortnightly. So yeah, it's kind of goes hand in hand with what content do you have? Do you have relevant, new, fresh, inspiring content to share? And I think test and learn is really the way to go. So try fortnightly and see how that goes.
I love that. And so when you say fortnightly, is that because that's just like a general good starting place that you can go up or down from? Is that sort of like when you go in and do consultancy, is that sort of say, let's dip our toe in and do fortnightly and do more or less based on the results? Or is that not a general rule of thumb?
It's a good question. So it's a good starting point. If this particular company has lots of great fresh content and they've got real high engagement, they could go to weekly, and weekly is normally for most businesses the kind of ideal. But it might be, given the length of time that they have to make B2B, the kind of the buying process is long. It's just about making sure they have relevant content to share over that time. It could be 6 months to a year. So it's just about, weekly might be too much. I think it's about testing it.
Nice. That's perfect. And like, that's a curiosity. So like there were a few comments in the chat as we were going through. So when you were sharing the very good emails link, a few people were asking also about like B2B examples and stuff like that. So it feels like a really relevant thing that folks are worried in B2B, particularly about overwhelming their audience, or indeed having like boring content, which kind of brings us on to the second question. So I'm going to read it out and then we'll investigating it. So the question is coming up with, so it's more of a statement than anything, but it says coming up with fresh, unique and engaging content. Also getting around the regimented email systems and how to make emails stand out from the crowd. So that was the problem that was described there, the person sort of like that thing about just sort of like creating content that's actually good. Like everyone says, let's create good content, but it's so hard to actually say what that is. So how would you approach that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'd love to know more about what you're already currently doing and, the type of product you or service you're selling. But one of the things that you can do, so one of the points I made in the presentation was to start with what kind of questions do we get asked all the time? And that kind of you can also have a look at what people are searching for. So looking out at other marketing channels. So in terms of your search terms, what is it that people are typing in to Google to find you, or, in relation to the problem that you're helping them solve? So anything around what your user, your client, your customer is searching for is always a good starting point, or what they're asking for. There's a really good website, and I'm going to get it wrong. I think it's Answer the Public. It might be Ask the Public. I'll share it afterwards. If you haven't heard of it already, I think most of you have. It's a really good way just to see what people are searching for. I know just a bit outside of Answer the Public. Thank you, Jennifer. It's just a really good way to get a sense of what people are searching for. In terms of content ideas for email marketing, once you've got those, you can bring that into, you could do things like behind the scenes, depending on your business. You could do video how-to content. It should be 100% doing video if you're not already. You could do like tip of the month. Um, you could do before and after. It depends on your business, of course. UGC content, so user generated content. So again, depending on your business, you want to pull in what your audience are already sharing about what you do. So I recommend having a look at Answer the Public and starting to brainstorm what you can put into your email. And I encourage you to take some risks and try something new, because in all honesty, you want to look at what your competitors are doing, and they might be playing it safe. So be a bit different, stand out, try and take risks. I think it's a great way to kind of lean into a test and learn strategy.
Yeah, it's funny. You're bringing back memories of when we first established our newsletter. We had something called the Alternate Wednesday at 2 Club, and it was so stupid. It was so stupid, but it was like very, very tangential to marketing. I'm pretty sure everyone would unsubscribe now if they received those emails. But like we dialed it down from that point, but I think the spirit still remains. And you can kind of, if you go too far, you can almost bring it back sometimes. Probably terrible advice. Don't count that as consultancy. But I think, like if you're doing a little bit extra, when people sort of speak about standing out from the crowd, then you have to be doing something noticeable. The enemy is gray. The enemy isn't sort of black or white. It's the enemy is just that place in the middle. So I love that. And actually your thoughts as well about the questions that you always get asked. I'm pretty sure most folks on the call could write down 20 questions that your customers or community ask you on the regular. And if you have that, then you have 40 weeks of content, which is, such an easy, simple strategy. But I love that. So thank you very much for including that. That's cool. So let's go into the broader Q&A. We've got, as I say, 26 open questions right now. So that's fabulous. So the first question comes from Laura, and so it's in a similar vein to what we were just speaking about with the content that we have. So potentially it could be the same. But Laura asks, how do I make my mass emails sound less salesy? I don't like those emails, so I know those who I'm trying to contact will dislike them too. But do I need to tell them about my product and the benefit it provides, or is it about something else?
Yeah, so actually, funnily enough, when we talk about questions you get asked all the time, I actually get this one a lot.
Good, that's good.
So Laura, I'd first ask, what is making you feel like it's salesy? Is it are you doing something that doesn't align with the values of your business? So I just have a think about, what is it that you're saying that might kind of jar against how you perhaps ordinarily communicate. And I'd also consider your content mix. So remember in the presentation, I talked about you might be sending too much promotional content. And if that's the case, yeah, it's going to feel salesy, because it is. So mix it up a bit, try some content that isn't about pushing them to buy, but maybe you can do more kind of educational type content that is helping people without necessarily pushing them to buy. So try mixing up your content mix and seeing how that performs. You might just be too heavy on the promotional emails.
Mm-hmm. I know that it's one of these things that day to day as marketers we care about all this stuff, right? We put our heart and soul into creating stuff that we think is good. But I guess it's also a point of hopefully slight liberation to sort of think that maybe, hopefully, most people won't remember an email if they think it's a kind of, a little bit bad, that they're not going to mind that much, So I love your point about just testing and learning, but I think there's also a point about permission and remembering our place in people's lives a little bit, and sort of realizing that we have that 9 seconds that you were speaking about. So it's okay to have that little bit of experimentation as well. I feel like I'm pushing people down some really bad bad roots here. See in the chat feature right now, folks are saying, I'm going to send an email with a swear word in. I'm not going to say it because the recording, but so Amy's doing it. Amy's doing it. Yuval's also got a recommendation for some really great non-sales emails by Brittany from Alaska Salt Company, which is a brilliant mix of both content and sales. And so definitely check them out. And also very, very good emails. That would be a lovely way to take inspiration. I had no idea that existed as well, Clara. So that's a really great tip. Let's go to the next one. So we go to Anonymous, the mysterious anonymous attendee, who says, what are your go-to tactics for increasing click-through rates?
Oh, great question. My go-to tactics, well, first of all, it's going to come down to is the content relevant? Is it interesting? It could be that the content, if you're seeing a decline, it could be that you might want to try testing out maybe different layouts, different content. So one quick win that I touched on in the presentation was that you might find your call to action is really not prominent enough. So you could make that more prominent. You might want to try switching up from long form to short form content. It really depends on your audience and what they want to see. Because I know with Marketing Meetup, the content is more long form because there's lots to share. But in terms of my go-tos, I'd be looking at, is my content relevant for the audience? Is my call to action really clear and obvious? You'd be surprised how people hide it. And yeah, I'd be really thinking about whether the content is resonating and whether there's any kind of urgency as well. So yeah, there's some questions to consider.
Mm-hmm. On the long form, short form debate, so in the presentation you mentioned the 9 seconds thing. So have you personally started to gravitate towards more short term, which directs folks to something which could be more long form on a website, or have you sort of ignored that because you like content is king, so like just make the content good and off you go type of thing?
I advise my clients to do a bit of both. If they're finding that they are seeing declining click rates, you could do a bit of a teaser. So let's say you've written a blog post or you want to kind of share something, a bit of a teaser. So within the email, you can just tease that content in short form and then link out to your blog post, website, launch, whatever it is. So you grab the attention, but then you kind of navigate them to where you want them to eventually land. So you could try that where it's a mix of, it's kind of halfway between short and long form content where you show a teaser. So that's something to try.
Nice. I love that. And the reason I asked the question is I was subscribed to a news outlet called The Athletic for sports. And so something they do really well is exactly as you've just described. They've sort of got that first paragraphs, and they've designed their emails in such a way that the paragraphs sort of fade away and then it gets continue reading, and it gets me every time. And so it's an interesting way to combat that sort of lack of attention sort of thing that goes on. The next question comes from Dominic, and I think it's a really, really fabulous one. So Dominic, and this layers into your segmentation from your presentation. Dominic asks, I always hear you need to clean your lists to improve email deliverability, but someone just that joined my email list a year ago finally opted in for something today. So how do you clean your lists without losing potential clients? Because I feel that fear on the regular. So how do you clean without losing folks?
Well, something you can try is, Dominic, and it's interesting, I'm curious to know why they opted in today and what it is that prompted them to take action. Mm-hmm. And a question for you, Dominic, is were they opening, you might have said this, sorry, the question's disappeared, but were they opening emails up to that point? So it's interesting, as if they're not, then you would assume that they are lapsing or lapsed. Mm-hmm. For those with the fear, when you're cleaning lists, what you can do is move them into a segment. So I talked about a lapsed segment, and you can set a specific goal for that lapsed segment. So for example, if you find that they have the potential maybe to still be reactivated, you could send them specific campaigns with the goal of getting them to click through and therefore be active again. So it's a kind of step before removing them from your list is to put them into a lapsed segment, treat them slightly differently, give them different content. You can even ask them, and I've seen this all the time, is look, I'd love to know if you're still interested in receiving emails from me. If so, all you need to do is click here, or whatever. But it's just inviting them to have the opportunity to stay on your list. And yeah, so that kind of hopefully helps by putting them into a segment and inviting them to respond before you get rid of them.
That's perfect. I know that Morning Brew and Marketing Brew do a really good thing at a version of exactly as you just described. So they've got a big red box that appears on their websites, which presumably on their emails, sorry, and which presumably only becomes active after a little while of non-action, that sort of says, "Are you still interested?" And you have to click it. And I sort of sat between two camps in it. I wasn't sure if I wanted to click just because they told me to click, but equally, it was a great way that I'm sure that they keep their list clean, and that's a great product for them. So it's a curiosity at the very least. We've got a question from Emma, moving our headspace into signups. So it's a few down, but I think the other questions have hopefully been covered. So we've got Emma Bolton, who asks, do you find that users are less likely to sign up if you make the name and date of birth fields mandatory compared to just an email? Email only obviously making personalized, so about the point of personalization. So yeah, how do you approach sign up forms?
That's a great question, and I actually didn't give too much attention today to sign up, but it's actually so crucial to email marketing. The question, Emma, I would be asking is, with date of birth. Sorry, I don't know what your business is, but one thing I encourage you to try is maybe adding some copy, and if you don't already do this, to try it, is to say what the benefit will be for them by providing their date of birth. It depends on your audience. Are they comfortable with providing their date of birth? There might be some I don't know, fear for whatever reason. But if you maybe put some benefit-led messaging on your sign up, within your sign up box, it might improve the number of people that provide that. I don't know if you need to make it mandatory for your product or service. You could always just switch it to optional, and add that benefit messaging. There's a couple of things to try there. Hopefully that's helpful.
That's really, really helpful. And I think it alludes to something else which I've neglected in the past, which is sort of building your data right from the beginning. So I know that your second point was about leveraging data that you already have. But I think in your answer there, you gave like a little bit of an insight into how you think about these things, which was, you said words to the effect of, do you actually need this? Which I know that sounds like a basic thing, but actually that's really important. So just to close out, I mean, like with stuff like data conversations with building your list, do you have like a couple of tips on where folks can sort of be thinking about how they should be building their databases in a more healthy way?
Yeah, I'll share the link afterwards, but the ICO are a great resource that I use regularly and share with clients, just in terms of just knowing about the whole world of GDPR and making sure you're kind of legit in that respect. But the kind of the way you could do it up front on your website or wherever you collect emails is just to be really clear about what people are signing up to. And you can be collecting first name and email address as a kind of simple starting point, but definitely check out the ICO. They're a really good resource.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. That's really appreciated. Clara, you did it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So thank you very much. And also thank you to Amy, who's just popped in a very useful chat comment. So I'm going to read these out because for the benefit of the podcast. So these are companies who have been suggested so far that do great emails. So we've got Lick Paint, we've got Dave Harland, we've got Estrid, Rob Allen, Dave Harland again, Drift, Global Fund for Children, Trello, Alaska Salt Company, Patch Plants, and as Amy took the time to put the list together, then also Dawn Creative, who Amy works for. That's really appreciated. The chat's been on fire today, and that's been sparked off by everything you've been speaking about here as well, Clara. So thank you so much for taking the time, and also thank you so much to everyone for tuning in and just creating this environment as it is. It's just phenomenal, week in, week out, and it's so appreciated. So thank you very much. We're back next Tuesday, 2 webinars left until the end of the year, which is mental, but very much looking forward to Christmas and all that sort of stuff. So we hope to see you next Tuesday. Please do say thank you to our feature sponsor this week. So that's Sahana at Content Square. It makes the world a difference. And with all that said, look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everyone, and thank you very much. Bye.